In this 3-part series, I will show you 3 different techniques of sculpting feathers. I will also show you how you can mix and match these techniques in order to create a highly textured and dynamic looking bird. In order to follow this tutorial, you only need 2 sculpting tools. The first one is a needle tip, and the second one is a small carving tool like this. Both of these tools are typically included in pretty much any basic sculpting set, but in case you are looking to buy one, I can highly recommend the one that I'm using. I am going to be linking it down below. So with that out of the way, let's go through these 3 feather techniques one by one. So the first one is the delicate feathers, or what I call the delicate feathers. It's the type of technique I want to use when I want to create feathers that feel very light and airy and soft, and probably what we would consider to be a traditional or realistic feather. First, sculpt a feather shape with your hands and attach it to where you want it on the bird. So this shape can be very rough since we're going to be adding so much texture to it. Once you've done that, let the feather dry slightly until it's leather hard. And once it's leathery in its consistency, take out your carving tool and start carving out diagonal lines from the middle going outwards and slightly down. Doing this will do 2 things for the feather. Firstly, it will create a natural spine down the middle. Secondly, it will create slightly irregular dentures in the feather itself, which makes it look more natural once you go on to step 2 of this process. Now, if you can, you want to start step 2 of this process as fast as you can after you've carved out your feather pattern. And the reason for this is that if you let the sculpture dry out too much, it will create dust when you carve in it, which is very, very bad for your lungs. But it will also make the lines look kind of jagged and not really what we're going for. Now, this is a very big struggle for me because I live in the desert and the air here is super hot and dry, and everything immediately dries out. So for me to kind of navigate this issue, I just go over each feather with a wet sponge before I start adding more texture on it. So that might be something to consider if you're having similar issues. Step 2 of creating this feather is very simple. For the step, you take out your needle tool and you start drawing on texture in the direction of the bigger carvings. And the trick to the delicate feather is to make these strokes very short and not very deep. And here are the results, and in my opinion, these are very dainty and very pretty feathers, and I think they look really, really nice considering the clay otherwise can be a pretty clumpy and lumpy material, but I do really feel like these feel light and feathery. That was all for the tutorial part. Before ending, I do quickly want to note something about glazing on these sculptures, and I may do a video about it in the future if someone's interested, but one thing to be said about this is that you typically do not want to use any type of colored or textured glaze. What will happen is that the glaze melts and it will get in all those small fine lines and crevices that you spend so many hours sculpting, and typically that's not what you want unless you're going for something very specific. Then go ahead, but in general I would avoid using these type of any type of colored or textured glaze. Instead, I would either use a very watered down underglaze to paint, and I also typically, it's a little bit different. Sometimes I will paint with underglaze when the clay is greenware and not fired yet, and sometimes I will do it after bisque. It depends a little bit on how the sculpture looks. I don't think that matters too much, except you do want to keep it pretty watered down. Another thing that you can do is that if you have a clay that has a nice color that you like, you can simply fire it and then fire it again and cover it with either a glossy glaze or a matte clear glaze. And either of those 2 options I think looks really, really spectacular with this technique and really brings out the element of the texture in a very unique way. But yeah, I think that's a wrap for this week. I was hoping that I was going to be completely finished sculpting this out by the time I made this video, but as you can see, I still have several delicate feathers left to texture. So I'm going to run back to the studio right now. But if you enjoyed this video or it was helpful in any way, please like and subscribe. It's very much appreciated. In the next part of the series, I will go through how to sculpt fussy, wintry feathers that are a little bit more wild than the ones we sculpted today, and I really hope to see you for that.